on the world. This is Purple 22 coming at you live with my co-host Styled Pigeon. We've got a new background. I'm in a new state. I'm in my home state of Tennessee. It's been a while, but I'm so glad to be back. Pigeon, my dude, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited about the show. We put this together a while back when I was on with Jack Ben Switch on the We Are Ready podcast for a panel that he was doing, and our guest today, we kind of got to talking, and so we're really excited to have this guest. But before we jump into all of that, I think you have some things to mention for us.
Yeah, for sure. First off, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Roundly X. Gingerly is sponsored by Roundly X, where Roundly X is a simple to use app that allows you to round up your purchases into Bitcoin and other digital assets with your spare change automatically, kind of like Acorns, if you know that. This set it and forget it DCA tool helps you build wealth safely and conveniently over time. And it actually helped me pay off my Subaru during the pandemic, which was a huge help to me. So those roundups really add up. You can sign up to Roundly X with code Gingerly, the name of our show, and get you $15 of Bitcoin after your first roundup. Or if you subscribe to Idea Bumps outside of the US, that can get you $15 as well. Yeah, and with that, I forgot to ask Pigeon, is there anything new for styledpigeon.com or anything like that you'd like to pitch before we dive in?
No, not actually this week. I've been focused on some other stuff this week, so we're kind of like,
cool.
We did that recent episode about burnout, and I kind of listened to myself talk, and I was like, you know what, we need to address a little bit of that personally. So I've kind of taken the last 2 weeks and focused on some other things, and super happy to get back. And you were busy at the same time with the move and everything, so it just kind of worked out that way. So still go visit styledpigeon.com. Would love for y'all to see the website and everything. Even if you want to hit me up on Twitter and be like, hey, your website sucks, fix these things, I'll probably listen. Okay, so let me know if there's something you want to see up there.
Yep, styledpigeon.com. Check it out. It's awesome merch. I usually wear my Styled Pigeon t-shirt during the show, not today, but got some good stuff there. So yeah, man, it's good to listen to our own advice. It's good to be back after some burnout, and it's great to be here with our special guest, Mel. But before we dive into those introductions, Nick, could you please roll our intro video, please? Awesome.
Good morning. Good morning, Mel. Hey, so before we even get into anything, I have a very specific question I'd like to ask you, because I don't know if you know this about me, but I have a 4-year degree in linguistics, and I would love to know how to properly pronounce your last name so that I don't sound like an idiot doing it wrong. Could you help me with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So 99% of the time people say Anic, but the real name pronounced it is Anic.
Anic.
So it's Anic. Yeah. So it's Eastern European. My family is originally from Croatia. So
okay, cool.
Everybody's name over there ends with each IC with the little caret. So
okay, cool. So interesting. Cool. All right, fun. Sweet. Well, so today, everybody, we have Mel Anic here with us today, and he's going to be essentially telling us a little bit about a very cool company called TheopetraLabs. I have not done as much research on this as I normally would do, because I want you to walk us through some of it. And we've kind of discussed how, storytelling and narratives kind of come into play with these sorts of things. And I think especially with TheopetraLabs, because you're addressing such a massive problem, you're coming up with such a massive solution is really probably a better way to say it. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what brought you originally to the Theopetra landscape. Let's just start there and we'll work our way through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe like a quick few-minute synopsis on me a little bit. I originally moved to America when I was about 3 years old from Eastern Europe during the war there. We moved to Missouri. Grew up in a standard kind of Midwestern household, nothing too fancy. Ended up pursuing fitness and going the pre-med route. And that was kind of like my original intro to kind of working for myself, I guess you could say. Started a company. I moved out here to California, had a little nutritional company, ended up selling that, and ended up buying a couple of rental units. And I saw that the real estate agent didn't really do too much work. when I ended up buying those. And I'm like, I want to do that. That seems like a good industry to be in. So I originally just came into real estate as just as something to do. It wasn't a passion. It was just, I felt like I had decent amount of sales skills. I was like, maybe I can do real estate sales. Ended up falling in love with it. Absolutely loved every single piece of it, interacting with people. It's just a fascinating thing when you walk someone through the place that they're going to live forever and raise their kids. There's just something fascinating about that. It's like you're a small piece of their story, and you get paid to be that. And that was kind of where it clicked for me. Have been in the industry for a little while now, about 7 years. Have done about 100 million in residential sales. Went through the home flipping route. And ended up kind of discovering crypto twice, which is, first in 2015, thought it was a massive scam. I was like, I'm not touching this with a 10-foot pole. And then again, in 2018, which is where I kind of went all in, and just kind of sat on the sidelines for about, 2.5 years, 3 years, waiting for someone to build a real estate project. You hear a lot of terms, being used, tokenizing real estate, blockchain, the kind of the fancy buzzwords with real estate. But I noticed a trend where there's dozens and dozens of these coming out, and nothing ever really ended up coming to fruition. And that's kind of where I figured, I'll take a stab at it. And we kind of went the opposite approach, which is instead of the fancy tokenizing, let's see if we can actually create a solution, something that can make it maybe slightly more sustainable. Not because we're Mother Teresa. I tell my team this all the time. We're not doing this because we're Mother Teresa. It's simply a strategy to survive. And I think the way you survive right now in this legal climate is by providing some sort of benefit and showing that we can produce, even if it's a 1% more efficiency on something like housing in this industry, then it's a plus and it's a win. And it's like, I can sleep good at night. And that's kind of the strategy that we're with right now is affordable housing now, everything later. That's kind of the strategy with TheopetraLabs right now.
Gotcha. Okay. So, I'm kind of assimilating all of this into my already existing knowledge about TheopetraLabs. The brain's moving a little slow today because yesterday was my birthday, actually. So, big old 34 today
Nice.
for the first time.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So that's what has happened with you, and you've gotten into this whole TheopetraLabs thing. Can you tell me what specific problem TheopetraLabs is actually trying to address with the housing market? Let's say, like, I look at the housing market and I go, well, my problem with the housing market is everything's so damned expensive, right? Like, I want to buy a house for $4. If that's possible, I want it to be as cheap as possible for me so that I can have a place to stay, a place to live, and a place to, like you said, start a family, etc., live my life. What is the specific part of that TheopetraLabs is addressing so far?
Yeah, so this is actually something that right before I started building Theo, I actually went down a massive rabbit hole into housing itself. And I'm sure as you guys got more into Bitcoin, whichever everybody does, when they dive into Bitcoin, they go into a massive central bank rabbit hole. It's like this never ending thing. And
yep,
that's what I was laughing when you said you got into Bitcoin twice. I was like, yep, like every single person, everybody's like, this looks super scammy, and then 3 years later, they're like, oh my god, this changed my life.
Absolutely. Housing is actually I would say a equivalent rabbit hole, surprisingly, where back in the 1970s and 1980s, they started the U.S. government started a department called the Housing and Urban Development Department, which is aimed to assist housing. And their solution to help lower income individuals was purely to take the budget from the U.S. government and essentially give stimulus checks to the landlords. So it's, hey, this person is low income. Let's say rent is $1,000. We're going to pay 70% of that. So $700 the U.S. government will take from U.S. tax dollars. We're going to give that to the landlord, $300 what the resident pays. So it's kind of essentially doing stimulus checks. In 2020, that was a big thing, but we've actually been doing this for almost 5 decades now.
It's a very government solution to a problem too. We'll throw some money at it.
We'll just start tossing money at it. And it turned absolutely fascinating to me because more and more people ended up trying to hop onto the program. And right now, the waiting list is years and years long for people trying to actually get onto the program. But what's actually crazy is the landlords are allowed to increase rents by whatever the hell they want. So now the landlord's incentive is jack up the rent as high as I possibly can because the government pays 70%. So if I raise $100, the tenant only pays 30 of those dollars. The government pays 70. Where that kind of starts screwing things up is if I'm a landlord and I see that 123 Main Street across the street just raised their rent $100. I don't know if they're Section 8 or not. I just see the data that they're charging $1,100 now. I'm going to say, well, hold on a minute. You're getting $1,100. I want $1,200, right? And then I do it, and then you end up doing it, and it turns into this massive musical chair scenario where the government is actually exacerbating the housing crisis by, essentially allowing landlords to raise rents by whatever they want instead of actually helping the solution, which is a fascinating kind of conclusion that we came to as the problem, I guess you could say.
As someone who wants a house soon, I hope that music stops very quickly. Tired of the musical chairs, man.
I think I saw you posted somewhere on Twitter. I think you were talking about rents. It might have been you, I think, but
yeah. I'm looking for a house right now. I literally had 3 houses pulled out from under me in the last week alone. So
oof.
Yeah, it's crazy. Wild here in Tennessee.
Are you trying to buy or rent?
Nah, renting right now, man. I don't want to liquidate my Bitcoin. You know what I mean?
Smart move. And I mean the reason that the Midwest is rising so fast as rents is the California and New York solution is, well, let's just tell the landlords you can't even increase rents anymore, right? We're going to cap it now at 3 to 10%. And now what the landlords do is either A, they'll say, fine, I'll stop maintaining my property, or B, I'll sell my property and I'll go to Tennessee and I have unlimited rent increases there. Yep. And then HUD's solution is, well, now we'll just start subsidizing it more. And then we give them unlimited reign on how much they can increase. So it's this massive wheel that's just running under the financial system that's not really talked about, which is pretty interesting.
It's actually the same thing in the pharmaceutical and medical care industry. So what you have is you have like 3 prime evils, essentially, like operating simultaneously, right? And so you have, like, in your industry, you have the renter, you have the landlord, and you have the government, and then you also have like another one that's like builders or investors, right?
Yep.
They're not necessarily landlords, but they're constantly looking at different investments, apartment complexes, building new apartment complexes, etc. And in the pharmaceutical industry, we have doctors, we have patients, we have pharmaceutical companies, and then we have insurance providers. Mm-hmm. And of course, the government, the FDA, DEA, all of them. And it's like this weird thing where they're each trying to make their money, and they keep changing things, making it worse and worse and worse to make more money. But ultimately, either the government or the individual is paying for that, and the individual funds the government. So the bottom line is it always comes down to the individual paying for that. So I don't know how to fix the pharmaceutical industry aside from getting rid of the 3-letter organizations. So how do you fix the paradigm that's in the real estate market? Like, if obviously the current paradigm is not working, because causing housing costs is through the roof. And like you said, I'll just stop maintaining my house. The house that I was renting before I lived here, I pulled out of that house because the floors were coming apart. The whole
Crazy.
There was a ridge line down the middle of the house, and all of the finishing was coming off of the floor, so it was like growing mold and stuff. We were starting to get sick, and I told the landlord, and they were like, "Oh, there's nothing wrong structurally with the house," was their response. When I got them to eventually respond, because I couldn't get them to actually come look at the house. So it was this whole big thing. So what is the paradigm? Let's say we erased all of that, and Theopetra becomes king of the world, king of the real estate world. What does the new paradigm actually look like? How does the new paradigm operate? And I'm curious about the benefits for not just the individual renters and things, but also for the landlords and investors as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think when approaching this problem, I think it's always safe to assume that people don't really care about doing with social good. It's just all about profits, right? And that was kind of like the first kind of design choice of, let's just assume nobody cares, which is probably the case. And let's just assume everybody just wants the highest profit possible. So then it kind of came into this interesting challenge of, right now in California, the renting increase caps are at 3 to 10%, which is kind of the limit. I was, as like a design parameter, we were thinking, how do we cap our rent at 1%, but still profit as if we are capped at 3 to 10%, right? So can you cap it, but still generate enough profitability that it's as if we didn't implement that 1% cap. We're still profiting as if we were increasing 3 to 10%. And Theopetra is actually utterly simple, where when the rent comes in, it comes in the form of fiat. We immediately zip that through into a ETH validator. We make that money productive. And that simply spits out quarterly to the token holders effectively. So it's the most simple model, which is instead of making your resident be more productive, charging them more, they have to go get a better salary, whatever the case it is. Why don't you plug that into a system that's already much more productive than just sitting in fiat? So effectively, money comes in, it's productive, it generates some form of yield. And of course, we're in the real estate world. We're not looking at quarterly year yields or monthly. We're looking at like a decade-long trend. So, for us, we don't care about market volatility. It's more of, can you make up 2 to 5% over the course of a decade versus how a lot of projects look at, which is monthly or weekly, from there. But it's utterly simple. It's cap rents, make it productive. Instead of monetizing your residents, monetize other stack.
I think that's genius. I mean, there's so many industries that are just cranking out fiat profits. And then, if you have the Fed inflating like crazy, beating inflation is something that's like, that becomes the goal rather than even profit, right? And so by taking that money and putting it somewhere else, you're automatically gaining a leg up on everybody else because your money has, drastically more potential, I believe, in a Web3 scenario. So I've been in this space since like 2014 was my first, my first time that I said Bitcoin was too expensive and started researching other things was 2014. And so, lots of expensive mistakes. But so I'm fascinated in this type of technology. So basically, correct me if I'm wrong. So Theo works where renter pays rent. Token holders basically like get dividends off of that rent, right? Based off of like yield in the middle, more or less. Or okay, very cool. So that's in operation right now. What's the like 5 to 10 year plan? Are you gonna just kind of crank that out, or do you have a plan to grow it out? Because you said you're doing rental markets mainly right now. I'm just curious about the next Web3 part of Theo.
Yeah, so I've always been fascinated just by communities in general and just the concept of building brands. And in my opinion, I'm currently running on the thesis that if you extrapolate the time far enough, the community with the most physical footprint is likely the one that ends up winning. Because we can only trade digitally you can only be digitally native for so long. I do think that communities are going to end up going physical in some sense. And if you extrapolate that time far enough, I think communities will own every single asset on Earth. If you just keep pushing that out, right? Whatever that timeline is, you're going to get to a point where every single asset on Earth is owned by some sort of group, collective, or community.
Real quick, sorry to interrupt. So is Theo a DAO or not?
No, it is not a DAO. It's a centralized entity right now with the core team kind of running. We chose that on purpose because I think DAOs right now are just too inefficient. It's just too hard to structure. Yeah. It's messy.
They've got a lot of work that needs to be done for sure. I was just curious. Sorry to interrupt, but
yeah, no worries. It's a pretty simple kind of design where you lock up Theo, you earn ETH from the rents actually coming into the system. They're not magically printed from magic internet money or anything like that. And then over time, as the protocol accumulates more real estate, you simply, the community can kind of have more housing as well. So the goal of Theo is pretty simple. It's how long can we sustain this 1% cap? If it's not as long as we intended, then we'll go to 2%, not a big deal, 3%, whatever that the number is. And effectively buying our community housing as well. That's kind of like the two main goals to build a community, at least for us.
That's fascinating. So basically, you're helping extend the music is in a way, but in a sustainable way for the renters instead of for the guys at the top, more or less, right? Because we're saying we really don't know how long the music is going to keep playing, so to speak, with the fiat system, but we can take the value that's generated from rent, put it through a Web3 system that's actually, like you say, it's real rent, right? It's real value that's going through the system. And in my opinion, I mean, that sounds like a better bet than hoping that the real estate market just props itself up for the next 10 years, So yeah, that's fascinating. So what's it been like explaining this concept to people? Like there's this wave in 2017, and you got in 2018 of people being like, well, let's just slap blockchain onto, name something. I had a guy pitch me like blockchain for, like air traffic control. And I was like, you realize this is one of the heaviest regulated markets possible, right? So yeah, absurd. But Theo makes a lot of sense for me. So like from a narrative storytelling perspective, right? Like how do you get people on board with the brand who maybe aren't familiar with Web3, or is Web3 people your target audience?
Yeah, so I think we could have a lot of fun with it. I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of turning everything technical, and it's just so serious that people don't grasp what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to the team where we were kind of thinking of something fun, which is theoretically, and this is just pure theory, which is if you buy enough properties in one concentrated area and you cap that rent at 1%, you actually lower the floor rate of all the properties in that area, if that makes sense. So you're almost like anchoring in a weird way.
You have the most nodes.
Exactly. So I think one take we're going to take is how many landlords can we piss off in any given area, and start kind of concentrating.
Yeah, I like that.
So I really like that. That's a salesperson way of thinking. By the way, like that definitely comes from the sales stuff that you've learned in the past. So I manage a pharmaceutical team right now, but I used to be just on the phone selling pharma and or selling drugs, and one of the things that I do is I'd get hung up on as many times in a day as I could. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, like we got to take this thing that's like not great and turn it into the goal. Cause I know, I wouldn't be like, hey, screw you, and try and get hung up on like that. I'd do my job normally, but the more times I get hung up on, that's the more times I'm getting to that yes and that next answer that's actually, I'm not pushing hard enough if I'm not getting hung up on. So I love that. It's like shake things up, go after it. I love that spirit that seems to be very present there.
You got to have culture, so it's kind of like, let's find a BlackRock building and buy maybe 3 to 5 building homes around it and just start kind of anchoring them down and just see what happens. It just kind of mess with the system a little bit, but it's still keeping the vision true to what we're doing. So those are some kind of fun ways, because what we're doing is so not sexy. It's the yields are not crazy fancy, and you're talking 6 to 10% sustainability. So our biggest challenge is, how do you sell medicine to an industry who wants Butterfingers, right? And that's kind of like the challenge that we're kind of going through right now,
Yeah. Dude, that's such a smart take though, because my first concern is like, okay, well, so are you operating in the US? And if so, which I don't know if you are, I guess, right?
Yes.
Or so then you got to be concerned about regulation. But if you're coming at it from like hey, we know that this isn't sexy, we're trying to be sustainable, and setting that example for other projects is super needed. I mean, there's not enough examples, I think, in the space right now that you can point to and go like, hey, we should be doing like that, because it makes sense. It is an upgrade. It is a profit for some people, but it's not like, come get 200% APR on your home. Right. You know what I mean? So yeah. My next question though is like, what, so I believe that there's gotta be some crazy success stories for y'all so far. Maybe not, but like, I'm curious, like do you have like a pitch story where you're like, we took this particular area or this house or whatever, and we put it through the Theo system, and now, X person is way better off? Like, what's your go-to success story for Theo?
Yeah, so we actually just bought our first unit in St. Louis, Missouri, back in March is when we closed, and we have his name is Linnell, so we're gonna actually have a podcast with him pretty soon.
Yeah.
And when we were telling him about the story, he was super psyched, because he used to only rent in areas where he was uncomfortable, because that's just all he could pretty much afford. And it's been pretty fascinating, kind of tracking the way users behave, because now he has a much deeper sense of peace of mind, where he's like, I don't have to, I know that the price is going to be pretty stagnant and pretty consistent. I also donated my entire share of Theo, all my founder tokens that were donated to the residents. So anything that my tokens would normally earn as yield would actually be just sent off to the residents. So
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I donated everything away, as another part of like being strategic, kind of legally speaking as well. And it'll be interesting kind of tracking, but So far, he's actually been fixing a few things up in the home because he has like a little more pride of ownership. He's like, I'm going to be here for longer. So I think that'll be a part of our financial analysis is like, do people beat something like this up? You know, do they have a little more pride of ownership knowing they're going to be here longer? Do they take some of the repairs on for themselves? Just all kind of more cases showing if we could be a social good and still perform, you know, as well. But yeah, he's our first case study, and it'll be interesting kind of track to see how it evolves over time as well.
Interesting. So thinking about the story of Theopetra some more, and I think you just said something that's very important, is the thing about ownership, because the key to a good story is properly identifying who is the protagonist and who is the antagonist. And it seems that the story that Theopetra is trying to tell is actually that the resident is the protagonist. And that has not been the case in the housing market up till now, right? The investor or the landlord is the protagonist of the story. That's who the government's trying to help. They're trying to help them, while also being like, well, you know, we're trying to solve a problem for the individual, but ultimately who we're helping is definitely the landlord. That's the practical effect of what they do. And so, okay, interesting. Sorry, I'm listening and assimilating. I think that John picks up on Theopetra's story much faster than I do because he's so familiar with the real estate market and how those things actually move. I'm not from a financial background in any way, shape, or form, including the closest thing I have to real estate experience is playing a board game by Robert Kiyosaki. So,
the rat race, right? Yeah.
It was called Cash Flow. It was all about passive income and how to escape the rat race. But cool, fun board game, but definitely not technical knowledge. so you know, my thing, and we've talked about this in the past, my thing definitely comes from the literary breakdown of, or the theoretical breakdown of those storytelling aspects. And I love that John's asking you all the questions that I want to know the answers to, is like, what is the story that is being told? And do y'all have a head of marketing that's doing some interesting stuff for you? How is that all working? Who's responsible for that? I would love to. How big
is the Theo team? Yeah, out of
curiosity. Yeah, because I'm looking. Let's see the team. I guess I could just look, and I don't want to dox anybody. By the way, one of my favorite things about Web3 in general is that everyone's okay with putting up like a photo of like a dragon or something like on their website, totally being like, this is Lee, you know, he goes by Lee because of Bruce Lee and this dragon, and it's a thing, and that's totally reasonable. And you know, I go to my job and they're like, no, I need to see your social security number, please.
Yeah, that's true.
So sorry, there wasn't a question in that.
Oh, my question was, how big is the Theo team?
Like, yes, yeah. So we have 11 people. Everybody's fully volunteer. We didn't raise any venture capital or anything like that. There's really no salaries to anyone. It's just purely a passion project, just from the community. So it was just something that started organically with the community, and people just raise their hands. They're like, I'll do this, and people have put in hundreds of hours without any pay, just building out Theo's infrastructure. Yeah,
I love that. Cool. It's so rare to find that in any industry, and it's so common in the Web3 industry. I take it for granted often. I mean, I've volunteered tons for a bunch of different companies in my time. So yeah, that's super special. Cool. I was curious from a technical perspective. So you mentioned Ethereum earlier, right? Is that the only chain that y'all are on currently?
It is, yeah. We actually built out. You can kind of think of it as a derivative of Theo called REIT that was going to be on Stacks as well. We decided to pause it just because stacking issue. There's things going on, some challenges, so we're just going to pause it. It's ready to deploy, but we're going to just focus in purely on Ethereum. And I think a big part of that too is just the simplicity of just running a validator and proving our concept. And just having one token is just easier story tell as well. Removes a lot of complexity and
yeah, 100%. I totally agreed. I mean, I'm a big Stacks maxi myself, but yeah, they've definitely got to get the the speed up, the fees down, like all that good stuff. There's a lot of stuff that needs work. So, just holding and hoping for now. So hopefully they get there. But I was also curious. This is the Web3 nerd coming out. But so with Ethereum, obviously fees are something that's a problem in my opinion. Do y'all run into that in terms of like eating into any profits, or are you using Polygon or something like that to work around fees? What's that look like for y'all?
Yeah, so it's actually pretty interesting. Even the fees, as in people trying to participate, yes, are definitely a barrier. As in, smaller fish trying to actually participate and buy, absolutely a barrier. But funny enough, actually sending ETH to all the stakers is actually cheaper than what standard real estate software actually charges to send money to. Like if you started a real estate project and you wanted to buy an apartment building and send it to, let's just say 300 individuals, that would actually cost you more money than it would just using Ethereum. So we actually accidentally discovered a efficiency. So sending the capital is easy. People participating is definitely a hurdle for on that end, because it's just not cheap. I mean, you're talking $20 to transact. It's up there.
I mean, that kind of shows how my curse of knowledge, I like to say. I forget that using Ethereum is more efficient than using traditional markets sometimes, because I've been in the space for so long. I'm not sending wires or anything. That's fascinating. So in the end goal, you want to have individuals like renters participating and stuff like that. So do you foresee Ethereum just being able to accommodate that on your timeline, or are there any plans to maybe like work on any secondary layers to help out with that?
Yeah, we're going to integrate with ZK Sync and drive a lot more efficiency that way as well. I think we can reduce our costs, they said, by 40 to 60%. So I think that's a step in the right direction.
Oh yeah.
And the way that I see it too is, if somebody's not willing to pay $10 to join your community, that's kind of like a filter to begin with right there as well. Maybe a little bit of red flag of like, this is not worth $20 for me to join, so
For sure.
I see it as kind of like playing life on hard mode a little bit as well.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Yeah. No, absolutely. That's super cool. I can just keep on rattling on questions. So Pigeon, if you have anything to interject, please do.
No, keep going. I'm actually learning. The whole Mel, you may not know this yet, but the whole thing about Gingerly, the reason that we started this is because John was like, "Yo, Taylor," which is my real name, "Taylor, you really need to like join me in this Web3 space." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. I'm interested." And I was looking at it from a outside perspective, going like, nobody's really telling anybody all the good things about Web3, which seems odd, since people are claiming to want to drive adoption. But instead, what you see is people just arguing about like, whose team are you on?
Yeah.
All over the place. And it's such a waste of time, in my opinion. Not even in my opinion, it's a waste of time, period. And so John starts, well, what about these NFTs? He starts explaining, because I was confused about what an NFT was and everything. And so he starts explaining this, and I was like, dude, well, if NFTs can do all of this, how come nobody told me about that? Like, why hasn't anybody heard yet? And John's sitting there going, I know, we're trying. Like, we're trying to get the news out. And I was like, okay, well, why don't we, put together something? And so the whole premise of Gingerly is, I'm an idiot. I'm not technically intelligent. I don't operate that way. I like to read books and play video games. And John is technically savvy. He's from a marketing perspective, he knows so much more than I do. And so I basically sit on here and ask stupid questions. And John and whoever our guest is has to figure out how to explain it to me, who basically turned big rocks into little rocks for the past 2 decades. So I used to build hiking trails, so there's a lot of breaking rocks involved. Very good at slinging sledgehammers. But so I'm interested to see what John's next questions are. I mean, my next path of thought is, how does, if I go tell my dad about this cool company and how he can get involved, what do I tell him? What are those next steps, and how does that look? What is the benefit to him and to, my parents actually have a home or that they rent, and if this is something that they could get involved with, maybe even just to supplement stuff for the tenant that they already have, et cetera. How does that work is kind of my next line of questioning. So I'll let John caveat that
No,
if he needs to.
that's where I was going to go to, actually, because the main storytelling part, like Pigeon was saying, gingerly is gingerly introducing people to complex topics, and basically we want to be able to say you should rent with Theo because this, and not even have to mention Web3 or like anything like that. So yeah, what does that look like if we were pitching to our parents or something like that?
Pigeon.
Yeah, I mean, I would summarize this entire space because I love the concept of what you guys are doing, which is simplification. I think simplification is the hardest thing to do in the world, which is driving it down to like its essence. And what I would say about this space is, if I could summarize in one word, it's communities. The communities have all the value. There is no Bitcoin without the community. There is no Ethereum. Nothing operates without humans, and humans are layer zero in a way. So I think with just where the world is going, I think communities and people being a part of communities are going to be a very, very, very big deal. You're going to see a lot more tribalism. It's just nature of the human spirit. And now for the first time in history, we have a way for us as a collective to collaborate in a way that I think will be what I call like immortal, in the sense of content. I think now will be around forever. You can probably look at content 500 years from now and see how people are collaborating, but also these assets now are going to be forever as well. So now for the first time, you can actually be a part of a community that, not just Theo, any community, that the remnants of what they were talking about and how they transacted will be around forever, which I think is mind blowing.
Huge. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think with our community, I want to just drive it to just the simplest bare essence is, with whatever money we can scrap together as a community, we buy housing for our own troops. That's as simple as it gets. It's we are forming a collective, and whatever money we end up scraping together as a collective, we buy housing for our own people. For our own community, for people that we want to bring into the community, and just keeping it bare bones, simplicity to its finest kind of element is the simplest form.
No, that's a really salient story, in my opinion. I mean, so many people are looking for community these days after the pandemic and after, like not just this splintering of society in a way. I just moved back to my hometown and you can feel it more than ever. So, yeah, totally agree. That's going to be a draw. Pigeon, what were you going to say?
Let me play devil's advocate for a second, if you don't mind, Mel. Tribe and community are big buzzwords right now. And okay, hang on. I'm going to really play devil's advocate. Are you comfortable with that?
Oh boy.
Absolutely. I love it.
Okay,
no, absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So tribe and community are cute words that Californians like to use to make themselves sound a lot smarter than they actually are.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of money that gets invested in California, and it's easy to survive in a market where a house that I could buy here for 150 grand is worth 650 grand in California. So, we talk about community and tribes and stuff. Bring that down to earth for me. I don't wear a collar, much less even a white collar. So how do I, what is community to you, and why would I want to be a part of your community as opposed to the community that I'm a part of already with all of the broke people?
Absolutely. And I actually did a video on this last week. My definition of community is people that do hard shit together, as number one, people that do what they think is good work, and then people that they do stupid and fun shit together. So it's hard shit together, things that you think are great work, and then fun shit together is kind of like the three basic elements. And I think to build a community, I think you just start doing those things. So for example, I'm going to go out and do 200 podcasts in 100 days with homeless people. And that's going to be a set of like NFTs that I'm going to just give to the community. And cool. I think true art is taking somebody from zero. We'll see if we can get them a job and then potentially into a home. So like a full story arc. And maybe out of those 200, maybe one of those ends up working out. Right. And I think it's just putting action. And if people like that action, they're like, I like what they're doing. I want to be a part of that. And I think that's as simple as I think you can get it for community wise is you just put shit out there, put out content, put out what you're actually doing instead of just buzzwords. And then if people like it, they're like, how do I participate? And here you go. Here's how you can actually.
Awesome.
I love
Awesome.
that. I think that's how people bond in general. Like if you talk about experiences, the stuff that you remember is typically the hard shit that
Absolutely.
happened while you were trying to do some fun shit. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
no, yeah, I
I'm a
identify with
believer in
that.
type 2 fun for sure.
Yeah.
As well. And thank you for letting me, hit the buttons really hard. And I think you answered completely appropriately too, by the way. I think that you're very clearly genuine and authentic in your answer. And I think that goes so far, because when people like me, the everyman, I guess, when we go look at housing or we talk about real estate, there's this trepidation that comes along with that, where like I'm just so confident that everybody related to housing is trying to screw me over,
Yeah.
and to leech off of me and my hard work and the pain of my back. And that's what I would love to see end through Web3 and what Theopetra's doing, and what any other companies are doing to try and help fix all of this. I don't want to try and promote your competitors or anything, but if somebody else has really good ideas, I think we want them doing the best that they can too, and we'll all try and fix it together. Ergo community. So that's awesome, Mel. That makes me happy to hear authenticity in the space is always uplifting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that made me think, speaking of like competitors, something that in this space is very popular is collaboration. So I was curious, Mel, if you have any, you don't even have to like say, oh, we're working on this collaboration or whatever. But if you had to just say, oh man, I wish that someone would come along and help us in the Web3 space with this thing. Is there anything that comes to top of mind where maybe somebody watching would be like, oh wow, I need to go, hit up Mel and collaborate and help them with whatever it is that they need to work on?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I don't quite know. I see it as I think collaboration is always the way to go. I was actually talking to the community about this in a video last week as well, which is it'd be cool to just buy a home for another community without even, just saying, hey, which one of you guys needs like a home? And we just do it and don't even expect a thank you and just see what happens. Right. And it's like, it's strategic, but it's also, I don't know. I feel like it just sounds like a good idea, because us focusing on housing probably doesn't step on anybody else's toes. It seems like everybody's so focused on digital. So I think a part of our strategy is just going to be doing some really weird and stupid shit, but also seeing if we can be strategic in the sense of collaborating. Because I think the biggest challenge for not just us, I think anybody building a space is going to be liquidity. It's just so hard to source capital. It's so fucking hard. So the only way you can do that is just having a long track record and just trying to almost force the other person's hand by just not caring, in the sense of, hey, Chainlink community, we, which one of you guys needs a home? Buy them a home, like buy one of them and just see what happens, and just doing different things, that in that sense, for sure.
I really like that. That's the intersection of all three of the things that you said create your community, like hard shit, good shit, and fun shit.
Yeah.
If you can get all three of, like, buying someone a house in a random community combines all three of those, and that's stuff that people just perk up and notice. So no, I really like that. I think you may not get it off of this show, but if you keep spreading that message, you're going to find somebody that's like, I believe in that. I'm going to put up some capital for that for sure. We're getting a little bit close to time, but I wanted to know like two things. First of all, what's the next big goal for you? Like, okay, so currently buying people homes. Do you want to do anything with commercial? Do you want to do things like, I don't know, some islands or a mansion, or, what's the big dream? And then I definitely want to give you a little bit of time too, to just be able to pitch and be like, if someone's watching, how should they follow up? How should they get involved? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So I would say the big hairy dream that we have is, I want to turn Theopetra in a way that is similar to what Ethereum did for digital assets. I want Theopetra to become that platform for other communities, just build their own, own collectives. It costs us hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think we can reduce that down to like 25,000 for somebody else. And we can collaborate together, in a sense as well, of we already have a decent network of housing. Your community can get access to ours. Whatever you guys buy, we have access to yours. And it's just like this collaboration that I want to have. The second piece is I want to buy an apartment building and only fill it with community members, and we all each share just like a equivalent share of that asset, and then just go out and just start making retarded content together. Like just go out.
Yeah. Like
Just,
Mad Lad style stuff or something. Like, yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, like my I was talking to a buddy. He goes, "Dude, what if everybody just wore like a skin suit that had TheopetraLabs and they just like went to the mall? Just random shit that's just weird, and and just have fun with it, you know." So I think that's kind of the track we're probably going to go down is those two paths, which is seeing if we can get anybody else that wants to build a community, integrate with ours, and then of course make it a little bit more real by buying a plot of land and like bringing people here or converting them into our community members, you know, together. So
yeah, that'd be really cool. Physical hangout space, man. If you could go, you could even like make a metaverse version of the space too, and have hybrid and metaverse both. I mean, we're both really into VR, so you know, you could count on me showing up for something like that. So,
yeah,
Pigeon,
VR is interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Where do you see that industry going? I don't mean to sidetrack here, but
No.
I guess
I'm a believer myself, but I just like the fact that it enables community easily. Like I meet up every Wednesday with Pigeon, so I'm in Tennessee. We got people in South Carolina. We got people in like Kentucky, and like California, in Texas, and Vegas, and we all get together every Wednesday, and it just feels like the homies are getting together, you know. So I think VR breaks down barriers that exist hardcore now, where it's like we're all in different areas of the world, but we can come together and do really cool things together. Part of the reason that Pigeon and I are doing this show even is because we spent so much time together in VR and, you know, reconnecting and stuff. So, you know, I mean, for the people that actually can't be at the physical space, having a virtual space as a stand-in is super powerful. So I'm a big believer of that. And then in terms of like advertising and all that, I mean, there's lots of other stuff. We do a whole episode about that, I think.
I think that the big thing that's going to happen with VR and AR is going to be the return of mythology. Like when you can properly empower somebody. I was watching somebody with the new I think it was the new Apple headset that they were using, the mixed reality headset, or augmented reality, whatever you want to call it. And it was this guy in a park, and he's walking along, and this portal opens up, and these like fantasy alien creatures start coming through, and he's having to like fight them with his sword, and he drops his sword, and there's like this whole big story that acts out. And I was like, you know, like we look at like LARPers, if you're familiar with LARPing, we look at these live action role play people and be like, they're such nerds or whatever. And it even makes me, I'm a hardcore nerd, and it makes me uncomfortable when people dress up and play pretend in the park, like as adults. I need to get over that. That's my hang up, but I'm not the only one who feels that way. Whereas if you add this like augmented reality thing to the picture, all of a sudden I'm not running around with a foam sword. You know what I mean? I'm running around with a friggin' lightsaber, and I'm force pulling this monster to me. And once we have the right force feedback haptics, I can feel my hand grabbing this guy, and I'm like being the hero of my own story all of a sudden. And I think that return of that mentality, that imagination, is going to really bring some things back that we've lost, and I'm hoping for that. We'll see, because I still like playing Diablo and, you know, World of Warcraft and all that nonsense. If I could do that in real life, I'd be in such good shape. If I've run the same number of miles that I've run in these video games, it'd be great. So that's where I'm looking from like an entertainment and exploration standpoint at augmented reality and VR, and you know, doing things like No Man's Sky, where I get to go discover planets, that's just so much fun.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm so fascinated by just the entire culture. I actually used to be a pro Call of Duty player back in high school.
Awesome.
I was sponsored by MLG, and we were just
nice.
That was fucking awesome. But
what's your gamer tag? I'll go look you up and see if I can find some old matches.
Yeah, it's called Mainstream 1E. I used to be, I don't know if you know Call of Duty or not, but
I'm not super familiar.
Used to team with a guy named called Scump, the Optic guys. I don't know if you know Optic or not, but yeah, a couple of those guys. It was back in like 2011. That back then there was like 50 people in the audience. Now I look at it, there's like thousands. They're getting massive deals. It's crazy.
It's a fun world.
So I've dived into Rocket League lately, and actually I'm kind of moving away from it right now because they're doing some stuff with their game that I'm not a huge fan of. But so Rocket League has like a $6.5+ million prize pool right now.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, holy cow. And the stuff that those people are doing is completely insane. So I definitely feel it. That competition is so good. And that's yet another community that, like, imagine TheopetraLabs works with some esports teams and gets like a college dorm built exclusively for their college's esports teams. You know, you got League on the first floor, Rocket League on the second floor, and Call of Duty first person shooters on the third floor. You know, like that would be so cool.
Absolutely.
Talk about building community.
Yeah, kind of like those gamer homes for sure. And I think one thing I'm super fascinated by as well is just the concept of live streaming. I think with these headsets and eventually the glasses, you will be able to live stream your life completely. That's actually how Twitch started out. It was Justin.tv, and he would just stream his life, like sleeping.
Yeah.
It was like a 24-hour
doxed.
I think that'll be really cool too. And I'm super excited to just experiment with all that. Like it'd be cool to just do like a 24-hour, 24/7 live stream or something and just fucking build for like a year and see what happens, or I don't know, just weird.
There's something about that has to do with community too, by the way.
Yeah.
Because like I have the urge to share my life with people, and which well, when I say it like that, it sounds odd, but I think everyone has that. Like, yeah, you want to share your life with other people. You don't want to just be alone. But how do you do that on a mass scale? Like, I think what I do is cool, right? But that doesn't mean that, you know, my mom or my dad or my sister thinks it's cool.
Yeah.
They're into other shit. So how do I find the people who think what I'm doing is like crazy cool? How do I find the people that find my bookshelf in particular to be awesome? And how do I share that with them in a way where I can also share their lives and we can do this thing together? So I've forgotten about community. Since when I was in college, I did some research into and did a lot of discussion around community, wrote some essays and some research papers and that sort of thing, specifically focused on communities and interdisciplinary shared spaces and all that, and the nature of consciousness. But regardless, I've forgotten about the idea of community and identity and all of that. So thank you very much for bringing those ideas back to my head. I will definitely have some time playing with those and wrapping those in. I'm excited to see what TheopetraLabs can accomplish, and I'm glad that you're at the helm. You seem like the right person to do it, and you have the right amount of passion and oddity to bring to the table. And I think both of those things are extremely valuable. So John, anything else to wrap us up? Mel,
No, yeah.
Anything else? We haven't really done any promotion and next steps, have we?
No, yeah, I was just gonna say I would love to just hear from you, man. Like anybody that's watching, you know, what's next steps? Like, what do you want to share? You know, where should people hit you up? All that good stuff.
Yeah, so I would say for anybody brand new, I would say anytime you hear anybody talking about any project, just always assume they're full of shit. So right now, the base assumption is Mel's full of shit. Don't listen to anything. Buy Bitcoin, put into cold storage, and then over time, hopefully, I can win trust by just performing through actual actions, and maybe then you can maybe dip your toe into the TheopetraLabs community. But that's my one word of advice, I think, initially.
Dude, speaking my language, like I appreciate that a lot. We've literally got the Bitcoin floating around in the background, you know what I mean? So yeah, 100%. Well, dude, Mel, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you better, dude. Thanks for coming on the show. I really do hope that everybody that's listening checks out TheopetraLabs, and also put some Bitcoin in cold storage. And hey, man, maybe sometime we can do another podcast episode from the metaverse. That'd be pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, would love to. And I would love to also hear, I know you mentioned you went to the woods for a couple of years, and you brought up consciousness a few times, Pigeon. I would love to hear about that as well sometime. So maybe a podcast on that, like on enlightenment and consciousness.
There you go. Hey, I'm about it. That sounds like fun.
That sounds super fun. Super fun.
All right, y'all. Cool. Well, thanks for being on, Mel. And until next time, it's been a pleasure. Nick, if you wouldn't mind rolling us out, please.